I wanted to close out today's show by kind of giving my thoughts on a topic that completely flew under my radar. And now that I've kind of locked back into the NBA a little bit more post-NFL draft, yes, the Royals are playing better, but right now, second round of the NBA playoffs, and we have an unrelated NBA story today that caught my attention, and I obviously have some thoughts on, and sometimes it's just fun to cover people that are going back and forth at each other and seeing which person you side with on an issue that might be polarizing to some, might be disagreeable, might be a real head scratcher. I kind of land in between on the Draymond Green, Austin Rivers feud that's been taking place over really the last 48 hours. It hasn't slowed down at all, and not surprised that Dan Patrick is kind of in the middle of this because, and I've said it multiple times on this show, if you tune in regularly, I really like to pull sound from Dan Patrick interviews. I believe he is the Howard Stern of sports radio. This guy is the best interviewer in the business as far as interviewing athletes, heck, even non-athletes. But that's more Howard's area. So for Dan to get the best out of athletes, have them tell stories they've never told on the air, give some really maybe vulnerable or revealing quotes. He actually had Austin Rivers on, who's a rising star in basketball media. You can hear him doing color commentary on NBC's broadcasts, obviously son of Doc Rivers, star at Duke, number one player in high school, and then had a pretty underwhelming NBA career, but now he's going at it with Draymond Green, who has his own podcast. And in the modern day of media and athletes having their own space and being able to put a microphone in front of their face and say whatever they want on a platform that they control, we're getting some pretty incredible content from athletes that is going to spark debate and spark conversation. That's just what it's like if you are in the day-to-day of consuming sports media. Here's what this all centers around. The conversations between the Golden State Warriors and head coach Steve Kerr have brought up, and the conversation surrounding his future coaching the Warriors. Is Steve Kerr going to come back and coach a team that right now, after they didn't make the playoffs, flamed out in the play-in game, Steph Curry's in his late 30s, Draymond's in his mid to late 30s, and is the dynasty has been over because they haven't been contenders for a few years now, but does Steve Kerr want to come back and coach a team that has all-time greats on the roster, but other than that, the cupboard is kind of bare, and he's obviously dealt with a lot. Steve Kerr has coached a team that has won back-to-back championships, and he's coached a team that's won 15, 17 games in a season when the Warriors had the worst record in basketball, kind of in the middle of that was the Steph Curry was injured for all that year. And anyway, been through a lot in his coaching career. So is Steve Kerr going to come back and coach the Warriors? We don't know yet, but that has prompted Draymond Green to go on his podcast and talk about his complicated relationship with his head coach that he won 4 titles with. But I think we know that it's not all roses and rainbows behind the scenes. Even when you're winning, sometimes winning can mask underlying issues that a player and a coach might have. It's pretty clear that that's been the case with Steve Kerr and Draymond Green after Draymond went on his podcast earlier this week and said this.
He's such a unique person. There's things he's done that I can never forgive him for, and yet I will do anything for him. When you spend 14 years with someone, when you've had the runs that we've had, playing the role that I've had to play and being who I've had to be, some things like that are going to happen. Everything hasn't just been one way. It hasn't just been like, oh man, Draymond did this, Steve's mad. I don't take that any way at all. Speaking of this December thing, I spoke to him after that and it was like, I don't think you like me. I don't think you've ever liked me, if I'm honest. Like, he cried. Like, really? However, what he's meant to me in my life, what he's taught me in my life, I was just telling him in our exit interview, the things that he's taught me about being a winner, I'm not sure where else I could have got that. I played for Tom Izzo, and Steve just took that to a completely different level, and especially showing me things about this level and winning. Like, I could never repay him for that. It's so important to who I've become. As much as he's done for me in basketball, a part of me think he's hindered me in my career and what I could have become. You know, when KD came from 2016 on, I have not had a play in our playbook. Not a single play that we run for me in our playbook. Since 2016. But if you're going to take one gripe and not be able to move past it for all the other things, then you're shallow as a person. That says more about you as a person than it does about Steve or whoever else in that instant. You got to take the good with the bad, man.
So it's really those last 30 seconds that people are reacting to, and that's what I'll spend the majority of time on, because the first minute is Draymond going back and forth, kind of serving one way and serving back the other, returning a backhand here, forehand here about Steve was a great coach. He taught me all these things as a winner, and then he's hindered me in my career. And I never think he's liked me. And there's a lot of back and forth happening in that first minute. And then it's the 30 seconds that are really catching people's attention, and certainly caught mine. I'll play Austin Rivers' response on the Dan Patrick Show shortly. But let me just say, it is surprising to me that a player that is as smart as Draymond, that's won as much as Draymond, and become as famous as Draymond Green, when you're not a scorer, when you are someone that is pretty universally disliked in the game of basketball because of the tantrums, the antics, in some cases the dirty plays. He has flat out gone and choked players on the court. He has punched teammates in practice and completely severed ties with those teammates and destroyed the chemistry of multiple Warriors teams when he was supposed to be a galvanizing force. Inside his own team, he has been kind of a problem. And I'm of course talking about when he sucker punched Jordan Poole after Jordan Poole helped the Warriors win the 2022 championship when they were on that surprising kind of fourth act. It was their fourth ring, the core of Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And Jordan Poole was this young emerging star, had just gotten a brand new $100 million contract. Draymond hadn't been paid yet. Poole was talking trash in practice, and Draymond punched him right in the face. And the chemistry and the bond between those guys was obviously never the same. And the dynamic of that team was completely destroyed. And Steph Curry is an all-time winner. Steph Curry is an all-time great player, right on the fringe of being top 10 all-time in my opinion. Probably the second greatest point guard of all time. But in a lot of cases, he has had to really overcome a lot of things that Draymond has put the Warriors to, getting suspended for Game 5 of the Finals because he got his limit of technical fouls in that postseason, missed a Finals game. He missed a Finals game. And that series, of course, the one they blew to the Cavs, blowing a 3-1 lead. First time it's ever happened in finals history. He's put this team through a lot, but the part where he talks about Steve Kerr hindering his career because they haven't run a play for him in 10 years. If you're a basketball fan, if you follow the NBA and you're aware of the type of player Draymond Green is, does that surprise you? It shouldn't. Draymond Green is not a talented scorer. He is not a gifted shooter. He is an incredible passer. He's one of the smartest and best defenders the league has ever seen. And he has played on teams that have had transcendent offensive talent. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson. And a few other guys mixed in there too. Back to the old Mark Jackson with those baby Warriors that were coached by Mark Jackson. Draymond was more of a featured piece because Mark Jackson was a defensive guy and saw Draymond as this Swiss Army knife. Now, Steve Kerr came in, an offensive mind, and said, we're not going to run plays for Draymond, but we will run the offense through him. We will get him, because Draymond is not defended outside of 10 feet. He's left alone, but he cuts really well. He passes really well. Steve Kerr recognized that and said, we're going to run the offense through you. And he was able to facilitate as kind of a point forward to Steph, to Klay, to KD, to three of the greatest shooters the game has ever seen. And it's just crazy to me that Draymond would be kind of so self-centered to say, man, think about what I could have done. If he's on another team in another situation, even if Draymond averages 18 and 10 for his career, but he's a Milwaukee Buck, he's a Sacramento King, he's a New Orleans Pelican, he's not a Hall of Famer, he's not a champion, and he's certainly not anywhere close to as famous as he is today. So I really can't believe that he's coming out and saying things like this when it's not even known if his coach is going to come back or not. Steve Kerr could come back, but I bet you even if this crosses his time, if this crosses Steve Kerr's, it gets to him. I'm not saying it's a reason he wouldn't come back, but it certainly would be head-scratching like, are you really that oblivious to what I've done for you in your career? So there's a bit of a fractured relationship there. Here was Austin Rivers' priceless reaction. Here's a clip from the Dan Patrick Show. This again from earlier this week.
Can he be right in both cases that he wasn't featured at all? But, I mean, how do you feature Draymond Green if
feature him doing what?
I don't know.
Feature him doing what?
I'm trying to be fair to the context of this.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's utter ridiculous. And you know what's shocking? Because Draymond has such he has such a high IQ. That's a big part of his game is how smart of a basketball player he is. So it bewilders me that he even thinks like this, because it's like, Draymond, them taking a chance on you and them playing you and Steve putting you at the forefront of that offense, making you be the point forward and kind of the, letting you allow you to have that voice and the freedom to have your, whether it's a spasms or when he loses it, or to be the emotional leader of that team. Steve let him be who he was. So to hear he was hindered, especially Draymond's never been an offensive score juggernaut. He's left open 80% of the game. No one guards him. And because he's such a high IQ player, he's been able to take that and be a free screener for Steph, Clay. He's been this enforcer. He does all these things defensively to dominate. I don't know what way he was hindered and why they would ever draw up plays for you to score. You were never a scorer.
I don't know how you can have a different opinion than the one that Austin laid out, and I obviously kind of, had a lot of the same thoughts as him. And just really, really could not believe that was something that was said this week during the playoffs, not knowing whether Steve Kerr is going to coach again. Steve Kerr is one of the greatest coaches of all time. He has played for the greatest coach of all time. He's played with the greatest player of all time. He's coached against LeBron. He has coached Steph Curry. If we're going to really poke holes in Steve Kerr's legacy, I don't know what we're going to do about Draymond's, who has certainly more of a polarizing and still a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it, one of the greatest defensive players ever. Let's not get into, hey, he hindered me in my career. They didn't drop plays for me for 10 years. We aren't surprised. No one has ever said they really should get Draymond more involved in the offense. No one said it about Dennis Rodman. No one said it about any of the best defenders ever. It's not anything that comes up. He's done his job exceptionally well. It's made him a Hall of Famer. It's made him a 4-time champion, along with playing with some of the all-time greats, right, like Steph, Katie, and Clay. All right, that does it for today on In the Zone. Keep it right here. Tune to KSAL, Royals baseball against the Guardians. Pregame coverage starting at the top of the hour. We're just a few minutes away. We talked Royals in the beginning. We had Jacob Simpson on to talk Summer League baseball coming to Salina starting later this month, just about 3 weeks away from the Sliders opening their season. And the Royals have a chance to keep things rolling. They go for their 6th straight win against the Guardians. Tonight, pregame coverage comes up after the break. I've been Zach Ebrahim, and this has been In the Zone. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day.